So many of us have been saying for quite a while now that we are yet to see the perfect video game adaptation. And while that virus has continued to spread throughout numerous takes on popular games for over the last decade, with HBO's The Last of Us, we may be looking at our first truly great adaptation. In one episode, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann are able to introduce us to this story in a natural yet highly engrossing way that for newcomers seems just as effective. I have to say, I was stunned by how good of a start this is, with the result being quality television that lays the table for an even more eventful 9-episode run. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my review for the opening episode of The Last of Us, discussing why I think it's a perfect start for the new HBO Max series. There will be brief spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend watching this review after doing so. Before I get into it though, if you want to see more videos on The Last of Us and upcoming TV and movie related releases, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my review for The Last of Us Episode 1. So The Last of Us is the much anticipated adaptation from HBO on what a lot of people consider is one of the greatest video games of all time. We've seen popular video games adapted into the film and TV form in recent times to very disappointing results, and I think many of us were going into this adaptation not expecting one this good or one to be told compellingly for the small screen. However, The Last of Us is known for taking zombie horror and turning it into something more emotional and nuanced, leaving room for an adaptation that can equally do something more than just being your typical video game adaptation. Add on that you've got one of the current best storytellers working in the television medium involved, Craig Mazin, who worked on 2019's award-winning Chernobyl, and you get a fitting telling of this tale in what I can only imagine will be a beautiful yet heartbreaking 9-episode run. Neil Druckmann, writer of the original game, has teamed up with him to bring us an opening episode which feeds on the fuel of dread right from that extended opening prologue. The way the opening moments are extended for the TV medium is quite unbelievable to watch, making us follow Joel and his daughter Sarah in the transition from terror to complete heartbreak. It shows the rapid pace at which this outbreak takes control, and we follow that through the eyes of Sarah in an incredible 20-minute opening. Yes, they were able to translate the frames and heartfelt moments in the game to screen in almost identical ways, but what adds to this in the show is the heightened level of human connection and the believability in which it is captured on screen. I'd argue that the opening television conversation before these moments actually does the perfect job of setting that tone and making the audience fully aware of the darkness that's about to take form. I think it really establishes a natural feeling of progression through both the tone of the script and the performances on display that will only build even more with the characters that remain in the future after this opening event. And we learn very quickly that most of those who survive the outbreak are eventually put in military quarantine zones, leading us to 20 years later, where Pedro Pascal's Joel has become the grieving yet thieving father in Boston, eventually tasked with moving a teenage orphan to a resistance group outside the city. We haven't seen much of Bella Ramsey's Ellie, with much more on the way in upcoming episodes, but I'm definitely convinced by her early performance that she can showcase the range of emotions and traits that Ellie does. The writing, production and performances on this show tell us that as we go along, this isn't just going to be another zombie horror or action-packed video game installment. Yes, it will have those elements, and episode 1 definitely highlights them, but there's a beauty to the way it's all constructed. Whether that be through the focus on the grim reality that takes form in this decaying world, the odd ray of light that highlights faded rooms or destroyed landscapes, or more importantly, the silent yet impactful moments between characters that tell a lot about who they currently are. The The establishment of meaningful human connections, with a lot of those including Pedro Pascal's Joel, makes us truly care about their journeys right from the outset. The thing that makes this show have the potential to be a perfect adaptation is that, like the game, it's so far a gripping tale of survival that makes room for human connection through love, desperation, and egotism. And by putting this on display in a TV show, it becomes exactly the right medium to do it in. As touched on before, The Last of Us does attach itself to the cliches of the zombie apocalypse genre. There's the common note of the surviving humans being the greater threat over an infectious horde. There is the hope that a facility in the distance is working on a cure. There are rebellions and communities that have secrets that we will soon know about. And there are distraught survivors who have prepared years to get somewhere or make a better future if they can by any margin. This is all common stuff that could be the sole focus and in turn make this show feel no different from what's come before. But this adaptation understands what made the game a masterpiece and tries to add to that with the benefit of a new medium. It finds interesting ways to approach the cliches, focusing on the familial and new bonds in the aftermath of disaster. Mazin is a great artist when it comes to the characterization in his shows, making sure that the supporting characters and the many locations featured on screen become more than just one note. And while I do think that, say, the members of the Fireflies were probably the weaker element of this first episode, the promise of screen time with them and the hope to build them out just as much as Joel and Ellie gives me confidence that the creators of the show can successfully build a world on screen that is driven by its many characters. This is something Game of Thrones and other successful big budget shows have done in the form of TV so well in the past. And the expanded pre-apocalyptic prologue gives us the space to really delve into the tone of this world before we even meet the characters that follow it, promising a sense of further expansion. Its early moments, like how Joel is initially motivated by money, but then naturally we know that the relationship that builds between him and Ellie has the space to grow and deepen following the loss of his daughter in such a devastating way. And the hope that this girl may be immune is something that starts to give him hope in the time ahead too. With Neil Druckmann having clear creative control on the writing process, the addition of returning actors from the game, and his partnership with an Emmy award-winning writer and producer in Craig Mazin, there's a sense that The Last of Us can be a show of a high caliber in the seasons ahead. The $10 million price tag for each episode, which is pretty much right up there with installments of Game of Thrones, is used in the right way. The world is brought to life using stunning set design, showcasing bombed cities, and the takeover of nature when humankind begins to fade out. And to accompany this with the composed music by Gustavo Santaolalla and David Fleming, those who also did the score for the original game, the images are given an emotionally thematic purpose in this decayed world, just like the characters are. While we've only had one episode, I'd say that it's a really strong example that this can be a perfect adaptation, and hopefully it'll be the first truly great video game one. While we haven't had many great video game adaptations, it shouldn't be surprising that a storyteller like Mazin, with the support of Druckmann, has managed to take the drama of the game and turn it into a dramatic TV show successfully. In a smart way, they have maintained a personal connection to this story, yet made it an entertaining thrill ride for those who are new to proceedings too. Rather than just showcase the disaster involved, they've focused on the dynamics between characters, they've begun to introduce us to the functions of the landscape around them, and conveyed the emotional stakes to a great degree. Yes, it doesn't feel highly original to begin with, especially when we've seen other zombie and apocalyptic horror projects that share similar beats, but the human connection amidst the urgency involved tells me that they are going to play around with our expectations as the episodes come and go. And while doing so, it's the nuanced focus on broken and formed bonds between characters that makes this this all feel entirely natural. Video game adaptations either try to be too faithful to a point where drama and characterization for a TV show can at times feel light, or they can deviate too much to a point where no one is happy with the outcome. But in The Last of Us, it seems like we're getting a perfect amalgamation of it all. I do hope that they can continue to build on this first episode, but so far, I'm really impressed with the current outcome for this beloved story. But that was my review for episode 1 of HBO's The Last of Us. Overall, the show has had an incredibly strong start, being one part faithful to the source material and in another, adding it in the right ways needed for an adaptation of this material for the small screen. The tone is perfectly captured, and with the addition of a good storyteller in Mazin, it looks like we're going to be getting a well-made version of this tale. In the coming episodes, we'll know if it can live up to the heights of the game, but if it continues on this track, I think it's definitely got a shot at being the best video game adaptation of all time. I'm giving The Last of Us Episode 1 a rating of 9 out of 10. But to those who have already seen the opening episode, what do you think of the new HBO series so far, and do you agree that it has the potential to be a perfect video game adaptation? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos surrounding The Last of Us, alongside other upcoming TV and movie related releases, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.